My name is Mary, and this is the story of the day I realized I never truly belonged, not even in the family that raised me. I arrived at my sister Ellie's wedding with no expectations of grandeur. I wore a wine-colored dress that had lived too long at the back of my closet, chose soft curls over styled perfection, and brought a gift wrapped in navy paper tied with quiet hope. The resort was perched beside a lake in Vermont, all polished stone paths and flowers that looked too expensive to touch. When the valet opened my car door, I stepped out slowly, rehearsing my smile in the reflection of the glass. This wasn't about me. It never was. Inside, a young woman with a headset and clipboard greeted me near the reception table. "Name?" she asked, all cheerful efficiency. "Mary Evans." She hesitated. Her eyes darted down the list, lips tightening just slightly. Then too quickly, she smiled again. "You're seated in the hallway area, just past the main hall near the coat check." I blinked. "The hallway?" She nodded, already shifting her attention to the next guest. I glanced at the seating chart beside her. My parents were at the head table. Friends, cousins, co-workers, everyone had a seat beneath the chandeliers. But me? I wasn't on the chart at all. I walked into the main hall, searching for a mistake. Through the crowd, I saw Mom, adjusting Ellie's veil like a finishing touch on a masterpiece. They were laughing, close, radiant. I approached slowly. "Mom, can I talk to you for a second?" She barely turned. "Not now, Mary, we're busy." "It's important." She sighed like I was a chore. "What is it?" I was seated in the hallway. She blinked once, then shrugged. "We had to prioritize close family." "I am close family." Ellie's voice slid in, sugar-laced and brittle. "It was probably a mix-up. Don't make this a thing." I turned to Mom again. "Seriously?" She sighed. "Don't ruin your sister's big day. Be grateful you were invited." Grateful, like being forgotten was a gift. I stood there, swallowing every word I wanted to say. Then I nodded, turned, and walked away. I sat on the cushioned bench beside the coat rack, the hallway quieter now that most guests had filtered into the main hall. The sound of distant clinking glasses and laughter floated out like music from another world. I rested my purse on my lap and stared at the ivory card in my hand, my name printed in gold cursive. Mary Evans, Table H, hallway area. Elegant, detached, final. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Maybe it wasn't just cardstock. It was years of dismissal, wrapped in calligraphy and placed neatly in my hands. I turned the card over. No note, no warm scribble from the bride. Just the clean, polished cold of being assigned to the shadows. And that's when it returned, sharp and sudden like a cut reopened. 3 years ago at Thanksgiving, I had gone home alone. Ellie was off somewhere exotic with one of her boyfriends, and for once, it was just me and our parents. The house felt still. I'd thought, foolishly, that maybe we could finally connect, that maybe, in Ellie's absence, I might exist a little more. Mom had asked me to look for old family photos for a scrapbook she wanted to gift Ellie. I'd gone to my childhood bedroom, small, untouched. The same single bed, the faded wallpaper, the scent of furniture polish, and something else. Nostalgia, tinged with absence. In the vanity drawer, I found it. A slim, leather-bound notebook. I wasn't snooping. I was searching for belonging. Tuck your thane. First page read, Ellie's first day of kindergarten. She didn't cry, my brave little doll. Page after page, year after year. Ellie's milestones, her fears, her favorites, her growth. Baked pasta, thunderstorms, ballet recitals, birthday parties. And me? Not a single word. I had flipped through the entire thing twice. My name never appeared. When I asked Mom about it, still seated on the carpeted floor, the notebook open across my lap, she had smiled and said, "You never needed to be written about. You've always been independent." As if that were a kindness. Now, sitting in that hallway, place card trembling in my hand, I finally understood. I wasn't forgotten. I was never really seen. I don't know when it started exactly. being the daughter who never needed much. Maybe it was when I stopped asking to be picked up from school and took the bus home instead. Maybe when I learned how to braid my own hair, pack my own lunch, handle my own report cards. There's this quiet reward in being low maintenance, I suppose. You get praised for it, especially in a family like mine. You're so strong, Mary. She never complains. Always so independent. And I wore it like armor. Smiled politely when they said it. Nodded like it was a compliment. Meanwhile, Ellie cried when she got a B+, and the house turned into a crisis center. She lost her favorite sweater once, and Mom drove to 3 malls trying to replace it. Her heartbreaks became family emergencies. Her moods shifted the dinner menu. Mom used to say, Ellie just feels things more deeply. She's sensitive. And, by contrast, I was what? Hollow? Less deserving of attention because I didn't perform my pain out loud? I remember one Christmas when I was 22. I'd just gotten my first promotion. I brought home a bottle of wine for the table, wrapped it in gold ribbon, set it beside the ham like a gift. Ellie had broken up with someone the week before. She spent the evening curled on the couch in a blanket while Mom sat beside her stroking her hair. At one point, Mom looked at me and said, "It's so good that you're okay on your own. You've always been like that." I nodded and took my place in the corner of the room. Being independent had become my identity, but what no one ever said, what no one ever asked, was how it felt to always be the one who didn't need help. How it felt to be the stable one, the quiet one. The one who was allowed to exist only when things were going well and forgotten entirely when they weren't. And maybe that was the worst part. They thought they were praising me, but really they were excusing themselves from ever needing to care. Stood there under the sharp glare of hallway sconces and the bitter weight of being seated next to a coat rack, and I made a choice. I walked back into the main hall, not to make a scene, but to speak. I found my mother first, her hands fussing over Ellie's veil like it was spun from glass. "Mom," I said gently. She didn't even look up. "Not now, Mary. We're busy." "Just a minute." With a heavy sigh, she stepped aside. Ellie turned toward me with that sugary smile that had fooled people for years. "Is something wrong?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "I've been seated in the hallway," I said, holding up the card like proof of my own erasure. My mother blinked once, then shrugged. "We had to prioritize close family." "I am close family?" She gave a soft, breathy laugh, almost bored. "Oh, Mary, don't make this into something it's not," Ellie chimed in, voice dripping with sweetness and condescension. "It's just a seat, Mary. You're so sensitive. Who even cares?" I stared at her, at both of them. My mother's practiced indifference, Ellie's smugness, the casual cruelty masked as decorum. And then I turned to my father, who had quietly joined them, hovering like he always did when discomfort brewed. "It's just a seat, sweetheart," he said, looking past me. But it wasn't. It had never just been a seat. It was every birthday I spent alone, every holiday I was expected to accommodate, every moment I swallowed so someone else could shine. It was being remembered only when something needed fixing, being spoken of like a footnote. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't plead. I simply nodded, tucked the place card into my purse, and turned away. Behind me, I heard Ellie mutter something that sounded like drama queen, and my mother sigh as if I'd embarrassed them. But none of it reached me. Not anymore, because something cracked. Not in a way that splintered me, but in a way that made everything suddenly, painfully clear. They had chosen who I was to them, and I was finally done trying to change their minds. The hallway had emptied, except for the quiet rustle of distant music and the occasional creak of polished wood under a guest's hurried footsteps. I sat alone on the bench by the window, my place card folded between my fingers like a forgotten note. I don't know how long I'd been sitting there, long enough for the sting to dull into something colder. "Mary?" A voice broke the silence. I looked up. It was Ethan, Ellie's groom. His jacket was slightly wrinkled, like he'd been tugging at it in frustration, and his eyes, normally calm and rehearsed for photos, held something raw. "Seeing you here, it doesn't feel right," he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Because your bride's family seated me next to the coat rack?" He winced. That, and other things. He sat beside me, careful not to wrinkle his trousers, and then exhaled like he'd been holding in more than just air. Has Ellie seemed different to you lately? I tilted my head. Different how? He hesitated, fingers nervously tracing, the rim of the champagne flute in his hand. Controlling. Secretive. She says she's protecting me, that she wants the best for us. But lately, it feels like she's curating my life. The words hung there. I waited because I knew he wasn't done. There are moments, he said slowly, when she says things that feel rehearsed, like she's playing a part, waiting for a scene to end. I stared at the hallway wall in front of us. You might want to brace yourself, I murmured, because I don't think you know Ellie the way you think you do. Before he could reply, a new voice cut through the air, low and composed. If you're still unsure, maybe your mother can help make things clear. We turned. Celeste Bennett stood at the end of the hallway, elegance wrapped in navy silk. She held out a phone, her eyes unwavering. Read this, she said to Ethan, walking forward. He took it, and as his thumb scrolled through the messages, screenshots of Ellie's true words, her schemes, his face shifted. Confusion, shock, hurt, then stillness. The weight of truth had finally arrived. And it was heavier than any seat in a hallway. It wasn't just the seat. It wasn't just the hallway. It was everything that came before it. Quiet moments that had stacked up over the years like dust no one bothered to wipe away. I remembered a day, 3 years ago. Thanksgiving. Ellie wasn't home, off in Portugal with some boyfriend she'd met 2 weeks prior, and the house felt strangely breathable without her presence, without the scent of her expensive perfume lingering in the halls like a signature no one could ignore. That day, Mom had asked me to dig through the storage in my old room to find some childhood photos for a family album. I'd nodded, happy to be asked, even for something small. It felt like a rare crack in the wall. My room hadn't changed much. Same twin bed, same posters, even the same lamp with the cracked shade I'd kept since college. I opened a drawer, found the photo box, and then noticed something else. A small leather-bound notebook. Soft brown, worn at the edges. Familiar. I didn't mean to pry. But I opened it, and there she was, page after page, written in my mother's delicate cursive. Not about me, about Ellie. Ellie's first day of school. Ellie's fear of thunder. Ellie's favorite dress. Ellie's laugh at age 6. Every entry was a preserved memory, a catalog of someone adored. I flipped faster, searching for anything. One line, one date, one name that belonged to me. There was nothing. When my mother walked in, I was still sitting on the floor, the book open in my lap. I asked softly, "You wrote all this for Ellie?" She barely looked at it. "She's sensitive," she said, like it explained everything. I had to write things down so she'd feel remembered. I looked up. "And me?" She gave a tired smile. "You never needed to be written about. You've always been the strong one." That phrase, "you didn't need to be remembered," burned into me that day. Not because I wanted to be fragile, but because I had never asked to be forgotten, and now sitting in a hallway beside a coat rack, I finally understood. The conference room upstairs was colder than the hallway, quieter too, like it had been waiting all day for this moment. Ethan sat at the head of the polished oak table, one hand resting on his knee, the other still loosely gripping his phone. The door shut behind us with a quiet click, and for a moment, none of us spoke. Celeste stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder. I sat a little off to the side, hands folded in my lap. My mother lingered by the door, confused, still pretending none of this could possibly concern her. Then Ellie walked in. Her gown swept behind her like a parade flag she still believed was being waved in celebration. Her face was tight, smiling, but only on the surface. "What's going on?" she asked. "Why are we in here?" Ethan stood slowly. His voice was low. "I think it's time we stop pretending." Ellie blinked. "Pretending what?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a white envelope. "This is an annulment contract," he said, placing it on the table. "And I've already signed it." My mother gasped. Ellie's expression cracked. "You're joking." "I'm not," Ethan said. "We've read your messages, the ones to your stylist, to your friends, the ones where you said I was easy to control, that you were planning a divorce once everything was in your name." "That was private," Ellie hissed, "and sarcastic. You're taking everything out of context." Celeste stepped forward. "And the part where you said my son was too dumb to notice you were training him like a pet, was that sarcasm too?" Ellie's eyes darted around the room. "This is insane. You're all turning on me over texts?" My father, quiet until now, looked at her, then at my mother. "Did you know about this?" She shook her head, lips pale. Ethan's voice was firmer now. "You didn't love me, Ellie. You loved what I could give you." Ellie turned to me, desperate. "This is your fault. You've always been jealous of me." I met her gaze, calm, steady. "I didn't write those messages." And just like that, the silence in the room shifted. For the first time, the spotlight turned off Ellie, and the truth stood in its place. Harsh, unflinching, and undeniable. Ellie's voice cracked the momentary silence like glass under pressure. "She's always been jealous of me," she snapped, pointing at me as if I were the intruder in her perfect narrative. "Mary's hated me since we were kids. Every time I had something good, she found a way to twist it." Her eyes were wild now, her voice rising as though volume alone could make her words true. She couldn't stand that I was the one getting married, that I finally had a day about me. So she went behind my back, poisoned Ethan and his mother with whatever sob story she's been rehearsing all her life. She spun toward our mother, then our father, each face more strained than the last. She's always acted like the victim, always made herself the quiet one, the saint. But look at her now, look at what she's done. No one moved. I didn't flinch, and that only made Ellie more frantic. "She wanted this," she shouted. "She's been waiting for this moment. Just sitting there, smug and silent, letting everyone else destroy me." I stood, slow and measured. The room felt strangely still, as if time itself had paused to listen. I looked at her, my sister, the girl who once cut my doll's hair because it was too pretty, the teenager who stole my sweater and called it hers, the woman who seated me in a hallway on her wedding day. And I said just one thing. "The truth," I said, "carries its own weight." That was all. And yet it landed heavier than any accusation. Heavier than her screaming. Heavier than years of unspoken pain. Ellie opened her mouth like she might shout again, but nothing came. No more excuses, no more fury, just silence. Behind her, Ethan looked down. Celeste's hand tightened on his shoulder. My mother pressed her lips together like she finally saw something she couldn't unsee. And my father, he looked right at me and didn't turn away. In that moment, I wasn't the outsider anymore. I was the one who stayed still while the storm spun itself out. The one who didn't have to raise her voice to be heard, because sometimes silence is the loudest truth of all. The heavy doors to the reception hall slammed open so hard they echoed over the music. Heads turned. Laughter died in midair. And there, she was Ellie. Hair a little frayed now, lipstick smudged, eyes wild behind layers of perfect foundation. Her white gown trailed behind her like a costume losing its meaning. She stood at the center of the banquet hall, chest rising and falling like she'd just sprinted through a storm. And in a way, she had. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" she screamed. Every fork, every flute of champagne paused. Midair, I gave everything for today. I picked every flower, every song, every bite of food for this family, and this is how I get repaid? Over some texts? Over a few messages taken out of context? Guests shifted in their chairs. Some stood. Others whispered. Ethan stepped forward, calm as stone, the envelope still in his hand. "No one humiliated you, Ellie," he said. "You did that all on your own." Her breath caught. She looked around, desperate for someone, anyone, to step forward. Mom didn't move. Dad wouldn't meet her eyes. And Celeste. Celeste stepped beside Ethan and said in a voice soft but immovable, "We read your words, everyone. This isn't about Mary, or your stylist, or a misunderstanding. It's about what you chose to say when you thought no one was looking." A ripple moved through the crowd. Quiet gasps. Disbelief. Then Ethan lifted the envelope and held it out, clear and final. "This is the annulment contract," he said. "I signed it." Ellie stood still, like the spotlight had swung back too fast and burned her face. She turned to the guests, but no one stood for her, not even her bridesmaids. Not even the cousin she always gossiped with. Her dress shimmered under the chandeliers, but now it only made her look lonelier. She had wanted the stage, and now she had it, but she stood there alone. Just her rage, and a silence that didn't applaud. The phone buzzed for the 5th time that morning. Mom. Again. I didn't move. I just watched it vibrate silently against the wooden nightstand, screen lighting up like a heartbeat. A name that once carried warmth, now just hovered in a space between ache and indifference. It had been 3 days since the wedding. 3 days since Ellie's carefully curated world crumbled in the middle of a reception hall, beneath chandeliers and champagne flutes. 3 days since silence settled like a soft snowfall over every call, every chat group, every thread that once bound our family together, however thin it had already been. I didn't block her. I didn't delete the messages. I just didn't reply. Not out of spite, not to punish, but because I had nothing left to explain. The 6th call came while I was boiling water for coffee. Same name. Same silence on my part. Then, later, a text. "Mary, I know you're hurt. Let's talk. Just the 2 of us, please." No punctuation beyond that. It was as if she had finally run out of polish, or excuses. I sat down at the kitchen table, mug warm in my hands, and stared at the bookshelf. Across from me, a single thick album sat wedged between a few travel guides and novels, its spine slightly frayed, its cover etched in faint gold, Evan's Family Memories. I reached for it. My fingers lingered on the cover for a moment before I opened it. The first page, a Christmas photo, Ellie in the middle, grinning. Mom beside her, hand on her shoulder. Me, blurry, off to the edge. I didn't flip further. I closed the album gently, wrapped it in a soft cloth, and slid it into a storage box under the bed. Not discarded, just no longer on display. Some stories don't need to be rewritten, they just need to be shelved, so you can finally start writing your own. It was late, too late for casual calls. The city outside my apartment had quieted, softened, beneath the hush of early evening. I had just finished washing a single dinner plate, steam still rising faintly from the drying rack, when the phone rang. Dad. The name alone made my breath catch. My father wasn't one for phone calls. Not to me. Not unless something was broken or needed solving, I answered. Not because I was expecting anything, but because I was curious what finally broke his silence. There was a pause on the line. No greetings, no small talk, just air. Then his voice came, low and unsure. "Mary, I'm not good at this." I didn't respond. I let the quiet stretch. Between us, he cleared his throat. That day, the wedding, what happened, what Ellie did, what your mother and I allowed. I've been thinking about it nonstop. Still, I said nothing. You were right, he continued, each word weighted, slow, about everything, about how we treated you. I saw it all in that room, and I was wrong, for a long time. The words sat in the space between us, neither warm nor cold, just honest. I finally spoke. Thank you for saying that. Another pause. I don't expect forgiveness. You don't need to ask, I said quietly. I'm not waiting for anything anymore. I'm just trying to live in peace. He let out a slow breath, and for once, didn't try to argue or explain. We said goodbye not with promises, not with emotion, but with an unspoken understanding that something had ended, and something else had begun. Not a reunion, not even a repair, just release. The ocean didn't care who I used to be. It just moved, relentless and free, brushing the sand with soft, unhurried waves that whispered of release. I sat on a weathered bench overlooking the rocky shore in Bar Harbor, Maine, a place I'd always said I'd visit someday. That someday was now. No one had called me that morning. No one had asked what I was doing, where I was going, or why I'd disappeared from the world they'd constructed. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anyone. In my hand, I held a coffee cup, still warm. In the other, a photograph, one from years ago. Christmas. Ellie in the center, beaming. My mother with her hand on Ellie's shoulder. My father standing behind them. And me, half visible, just at the edge of the frame. A ghost in a family album. I looked at that photo for a long time. Not with resentment. Not with longing. Just quiet understanding. Then I folded it neatly, slipped it into the pocket of my coat, and leaned back. I used to think healing would come with an apology. With a seat at the table. A photo on the mantel. A line in my mother's journal. But that seat, it was never mine. And maybe it never needed to be. Because here, under a pale morning sun, surrounded by the crash of distant surf and the rustle of pine needles in the breeze, I finally felt whole. Not waiting to be seen, not waiting to be called, seen by no one but myself. I took a sip of coffee, closed my eyes. Let the air move through me. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't victory. It was freedom. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one trying to belong. I already did, right here in the life I had chosen.